If you're waiting for courage, you're probably not going to find it. It's like waiting for motivation to lose weight. That's never going to come. But you can find inspiration, and inspiration will move you to action. And the only way you're going to get inspired is if your why is strong enough. If your why is strong enough, the how will follow.
Hey friends, it's Mary, and this is the Mary Guirovich Show, a podcast that champions today's working women to gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to up-level your career while strengthening your faith and living your dream life, all in record time. We'll cover topics like career advancement, leadership, personal development, faith, and health and wellness, so you can intentionally create a career and life full of more abundance, joy, and love. Let's get started. Hey ladies, welcome on into this episode of the Mary Guirovich Show. We are going to have such an amazing time today. I have brought a very special guest, and she is coming from Dallas. Laura Morlando, the Stress Commando, helps professionals and businesses network stress-free, work stress-free, and look stress-free so they can be more effective and confident. She is the founder and CEO of Down and Dirty Networking, helping professionals and entrepreneurs co-elevate, collaborate, and connect. After going from top-tier corporate professional to successful entrepreneur due to her dad's cancer illness, Laura then pivoted her business 100% to the virtual space due to an autoimmune and Lyme diagnosis. She knows the importance of community and networking to have meaningful conversations to thrive and grow stress-free as a business professional and entrepreneur. She's trained over 150,000 people over the last 17 years and worked with dozens of notable people and organizations, including the United States Federal Reserve Banks, the American Heart Association, and Lockheed Martin. She's spoken on stages such as the University of Texas at Dallas, the American Business Women's Association, and KLTY Business Social DFW, and has been interviewed on Womanars, The Jeff Crilly Show, and the Deep Rooted Bliss podcast, among other notable outlets. Laura, welcome on in.
So glad to be here, Mary. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so happy that we connected a few weeks back and that the universe and the Lord has brought us together, because when you reached out to me, I just knew that you were going to have something so special, but I did not know just how special that was until we had the opportunity to connect and talk deeper. The stories and the adventure and the journey that you have been on in your life was just so inspirational. So truly honored to have you here with us today.
I'm so excited to share this with your audience, and hopefully my story will inspire somebody. So I'm super excited to be here.
I believe fully that it will. I love what you do too, the Down and Dirty Networking. How did that come to be?
It was through a want and a need. I was pivoting my business online, as you read, and I was all of a sudden realizing I was disconnected. And when you're isolated and disconnected, it's really, really hard professionally. And I'd experienced this in corporate America, and it was really, really tough. So I wanted to not re-experience it when I was going through it this next time. And what I realized was that I could leverage the 16 plus years of networking training and create programs, products, or what have you, and repurpose it, since I couldn't leave the box that we're in right now, leave the microphone. I'm tied to the house. So how could you create something that could be a great, powerful experience, leveraging the vast expertise and trainings and workshops that I have? And so I opted to create the experience. And what I found out in talking to other professionals is they wanted an experience too. They wanted to feel less disconnected. They were feeling isolated. They were looking for more meaningful conversations and relationships. And when I started really researching, there wasn't an opportunity for anyone to have a 100% relational networking experience. So I created it, and that's how Down and Dirty Networking came to be.
Wow. Well, definitely want to have you share more about that later on in the conversation, and definitely how people can get involved, because I know networking is one of those things where it's like, ooh, this is a little scary, especially if you're on the introverted side, but I think you found something really special. I saw that hand raised. I'm right there with you. You know, I have my tendencies to be an extrovert, but mostly I feel like I'm an introvert just trying to make it in this world. But hey, us introverts, we have a place too. So,
Absolutely, absolutely.
so Laura, I know we have such a great topic today entitled for this podcast episode. Why is it important for women to have courageous conversation to skyrocket their careers?
Well, the simple answer is women cannot sit silent. I don't know what anyone else's experience was, but my experience was you sat silent, you did a good job, you showed up more excellent than anyone else. As a female in a minority, it was expected and taught to make sure you were 150% above everybody else just to be considered for the lower level rungs. So this was what was the tape running in my head. But what I realized is when you sit silent like that, you get passed over, you get overlooked. Your value no longer is actually perceived. And so you have to make sure that you are being seen and heard so that your value can actually be showcased and shine. So it's important that, especially in the corporate space, that you're having these courageous conversations. But there's another courageous conversation that you need to have. There's that external we just talked about, but there's this internal courageous conversation that you have to have. Why are you sitting silent? Where is your value? How are you wanting to show up? And being courageous with yourself and looking at yourself really honestly so that you can show up in a very powerful way when you're having these external courageous conversations. So give yourself permission to sit silently with yourself, to listen to yourself so that you can show up and be seen, heard, and valued when you're having your external courageous conversations.
So beautiful. What you said there, you said that you were trained and it was expected that you were just going to work hard and kind of lay low, and that the working hard, where do you feel like those that training and those expectations came from?
Look back, the quick answer would be everywhere. You're taught that in school as women. The boys are the ones that are elevated. You're taught that from your family members. So my family members being raised in West Texas, where they were looked down upon for being Hispanic, are taught that they're then less than because they're already coming into the table. If they get a seat at the table, they're coming in behind the eight ball. So you have to really elevate yourself. And then for the first 6 years of my life, I was living on an Indian reservation where my dad taught. And so there was this interesting parallel where there were the Indians, the white people, and we were this anomaly. We were the only Hispanic family there. And so you started to hear where you're different. You have to show up in a certain way. You have to fit in. So I feel like all of those different pieces played a part in me learning that. And then later, through coaching and executive coaching, I actually learned that because I moved around so much, I developed a really great skill to fit in, to mirror. And so part of that being silent, trying to figure out where I could fit in, what's the culture of the new area that I'm in, you just figure it out. So I feel like it wasn't one thing, it was truly everything. And it just built on top of each other. And so once that foundation's laid in your brain at an early age, the prover proves. I've heard this from a coach of mine, Ray Higdon. He'll say the prover proves. And so once you believe that this is true, everything you see proves that point to be true to you. And you will just confirm it, confirm it, confirm it, and it continues to be the case. And it wasn't until I had someone else show me a different way or question or challenge the way that I was showing up, or why does it have to be that way, that I started really looking at it. Back to that courageous internal conversation, it was, wait a minute, do I really need to do that? Do I have to continue being trained and told? Do I need to perpetuate that in the way that I'm showing up? But more importantly, the way that I show up gives permission to every other woman to treat me that way, and it gives them permission to treat themselves that way. And that's not okay with me. I would not tell my best friend that that was okay. So why am I telling myself that that's okay? So that was where those internal courageous conversations started happening, to really unwind that track of, you were trained, you were told this is how it's supposed to be subservient, just do a good job and know that you're less than, and that is your lot in life. Well, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And you have the power, it's within you to change it. And that's the piece that I didn't realize. I think I was waiting for permission. I was waiting. I don't know what I was waiting for in hindsight, but I was waiting for something clearly because I just was the status quo, keep moving forward, one foot in front of the other. And so if anyone is listening and that's them, I'm going to tell you right now, permission granted. You have permission to look internally and change that track and show up in a more powerful and stronger way. You have permission. You deserve it. You've earned it. And what was is part of your story, your history, your motivation, but it doesn't need to be your destiny. It can be your overcomer story. It can be your jet fuel that propels you forward and helps you overcome whatever obstacles you're facing, but it doesn't need to define you. It doesn't need to be a chain that tethers you to the past that keeps you from moving forward.
Yeah, that self belief is strong, and you're right. We do. We start to adopt these things as children, and then we just say, "Oh, this is it. This is my lot in life. This is the way it is." And we sometimes get a fixed mindset, thinking, "Wow, there's no way that we can change this." But Laura, you did change. So how did you find the courage to pivot successfully in your career?
So I look back at this, and I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie Forrest Gump. But if you've seen the movie Forrest Gump, the beginning of the movie, and even the ending, but the beginning of the movie, there's a feather in the wind. And that feather's just being blown by the wind. And I felt like all along my life was that I was the feather, and I was just subject to the wind and whatever it would take me. And I didn't realize that I could turn the way I was going and act more like a sail and direct my trajectory. So as I look back at some of the experiences that I had, I think it was that I need to fit in. I would just find a way when we would moves a pivot, especially early on when I was in school. So in grade school and high school, I would just find a way to fit in. So I took that skill, which was a great skill to learn, a great resiliency to learn, and I brought that into the corporate space. So anything that was thrown at me, I would just pivot. I would find a way. So if there's a takeaway from it, trust that you will always find a way. Trust that you're resilient. Trust that you're resourceful. You are more resourceful, more resilient than you even know and probably give yourselves credit for. Every woman I've ever talked to, I find that to be true, and I know that's been true for me. So that was number one, was just relying on what I had known but not really put much attention to, never really been intentional about saying that about self, but it's there. It's there, and you have that. And then there are two real trajectory moments in my life that really changed the course of my life. And so to answer the question of where did I find the courage, well, if your why is strong enough, the how will follow. So you have to have a really solid core as to what your why is. So for me, my whys are very simple. Obviously, my faith is number one, first and foremost. Number two is my family. So when my father got sick with cancer, it wasn't a question, where do I fit in? What is my role? How do I help with this? Mom became the physical caregiver. I became the financial breadwinner moving forward. My why was strong enough. I figured the how would follow. I trusted, even though it was scary and we we're kind of freaking out with what we're going to do. But divinely, I knew we were guided, and I knew he had this. I always say he's got me. He's got me. I have to lean into that. And so that's where you can find the courage and the pivot. Fast forward to the health journey that I'm having now. It's the same thing. It's the same foundation. Have faith that I'm divinely guided. Everything will perfectly time and reveal itself to me, and the how will follow. I just have to put action and intention forward, and the how will be there. So your courage, if you're waiting for courage, you're probably not going to find it. It's like waiting for motivation to lose weight. That's never going to come. But you can find inspiration, and inspiration will move you to action. And the only way you're going to get inspired is if your why is strong enough. If your why is strong enough, the how will follow.
Well, Laura, you sound very resilient and very powerful and very strong and very courageous. Has it always been like this?
I will always show up that way, but I'm more like that duck that's above water, you got it. Underwater, their feet are paddling furiously, like, oh my gosh. Yeah, underneath, you never let them see you sweat. There's always those moments where I say WTS gets the best of you. And WTS is worthless tool syndrome. It's something I made up. You're welcome to use it. We all suffer from it. We have it where we're like, oh, whether it's imposter syndrome or we're thinking we can't do anything right or nothing goes our way. That's where WTS kind of comes in. And you start to live in that downward spiral and you get stuck. And you allow stress to take over. There are times I couldn't see the nose in front of my face. I just couldn't do it. There was a great speaker that I heard, and everyone listening can try this. Take your hand, put the palm of your hand to the tip of your nose. You put the palm of your hand to the tip of your nose, try to see if you can look through your hand. You can't. You're probably going cross-eyed as you're can't even see. If you pull your hand straight out in front of your nose, all of a sudden your hand comes more clear. And then all of a sudden, if you take that hand and move it to the side, now you can see behind the hand. When we are stressed, we have the stress is our palm. And that palm is up in our nose and our face, and we can't even see that the solutions are right in front of us. So the example that the speaker gave, and I wish I could remember his name to give him proper credit, but he said, if you have your hand to your nose and there's a fire and the fire alarms are going off, nobody could see that the escape doors were just to the left and right of us. You would have no idea that that was there. And when he was saying that, I was like, that is exactly it. You have to get some distance behind things. You have to look behind it. When you're stressed, you can't see the solutions. You can't see what's going on. So yes, I have opportunities where I can't see it. I'm just completely stuck. Analysis paralysis, worthless tool syndrome, imposter syndrome, all of the isms, syndromes that I can come up with. And then I just take a breath. And I have two choices. One, I can stay in a perpetual pity party and stay stuck. Or two, I can get moving. I'm a firm believer that sometimes you need to throw a raging pity party. You got to get it out of your system. So get it out of your system, throw your rage or pity party, but know there's an end. There's a last call and an end. It's not perpetual. When it's over, move on. Take one step and move on. Yeah. If you don't need to throw the pity party, then what's the one action you can do to move yourself forward? And if it's to talk to somebody just to boost you up vibrationally, is it to say a prayer? Whatever it is for you, figure out what that is. Now, what I will tell you is when I start struggling and I'm in that downward spiral, I call that sometimes pinball head. I don't know if anyone or Mary of you or any of your listeners have this, but pinball head, when your thoughts are going from one thought to another. So you have a good thought, a bad thought, and they're just like bing, 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 like a pinball in a pinball machine. And you just can't focus. You feel like maybe your hand's in front of your face, but you're just seeing stars. So what you do in that moment is I take a breath. And what I've learned is a negative thought and a positive thought cannot coexist in your brain at the same time. What is happening is all of our default settings is to have a negative thought be the default setting. We hear a good idea, negative thought goes, no, yeah, but, or you can't do that. Whatever the negative thought is, pushes good thought out, and negative thought sits there and gains roots. And it just has babies and has roots, and it just takes a life of its own. But if you are intentional and you put a positive thought behind that negative to push it out, the negative thought's gone. And then stay intentional about allowing and fostering and nurturing that positive thought. It will take root, it will have babies, and it will take over the residence of your mind. But you have to be intentional. That's not the default setting. So one of the things that I've learned, especially in this health journey, when my brain is so taxed, brain fog's such an issue, overwhelmed, complete burnout, my default positive setting is gratitude. What am I grateful for in this moment? Sometimes if I wake up and I'm in a lot of pain and I'm in my bed, I'm grateful for my bed. I'm grateful for my bodily functions. I'm grateful for my pain. I'm grateful for my eyesight. And I just start, what do I see? Like right now in this moment, I am grateful for electricity, Wi-Fi, the internet. I'm grateful for software right now because that's what's empowering me to be able to talk to you. It sounds silly. It sounds simple. But what would happen if those things went away? The conveniences we just take for granted go away. We'd be miserable. I've been having power outages. Mary, I was just sharing with this earlier. We've been having power outages of all places here in Dallas. No, I'm not in California. I'm in Dallas. Don't know why we're having them, but I'm grateful it comes back on. It's unfortunate when it happens, but I'm really grateful when it comes back on. So in that moment, I would tell everybody, what are you grateful for? And it can be, if you're just having a really bad moment, there were moments where I am grateful I am not acting on these horrible thoughts that I have right now for this person that I'm very upset with, or for doing some of the things that are negative, but my emotions are telling me to do. I'm grateful that I'm not acting on those right now and choosing bad behavior. I'm grateful I'm going to respond differently instead of react. Sometimes that's all I can be grateful for in that moment because I can't see beyond the hand that's in front of my face. So no, you don't have it all together, but you can create a framework and you can redefine your own default setting.
Yeah, and a few things are coming up as you're saying this, and so many good metaphors in there. Like the hand thing. Oh my gosh, of course, yes, you cannot see through that hand and the ping pong ball. We're definitely relating to that. Wow, the gratitude, right? Because this takes us back to what God wants for us. He wants us to find joy in all circumstances, not be joyful for all circumstances, but find the joy in all circumstances. And it's true, no matter how bad things are, if we have breath in our lungs, it could be a lot worse, right? Well, it could be a lot greater. We'd be in heaven. That wouldn't be terrible, but not too soon, not too soon. But the point is, and I love the way you said that because it's a practice that I've had for several years. And it truly transformed my life. Just a simple practice of writing down three things I'm grateful for. And we've instilled it with our son. So after nighttime prayer, we say three things that we're grateful for. And it's just such a great way to end the evening with my son and just help him to focus on the things that he's been given. And sometimes he's like, I'm not grateful. There's nothing to be grateful for. And so I can remind him, well, you have this or that, or you get to do this thing or these families. And sometimes he'll say things and he likes to do what I call future gratitude a lot. He's very grateful for things in the future. And so at one point he was telling me how grateful he is for his birthday party coming up. And so he's just grateful. He was grateful about a dog at one point. Now we own the dog. So his gratitude often comes to fruition when it's that future gratitude, and that in the moment gratitude just brings us back to we have so many blessings. And the other thing that was really just coming up is, God is in control at the end of the day. So if you're going through stress, if chaos is ensuing, like just got to remember, God is going to use all of that. Even these negative situations that we go through, the time that I was told, hey, Mary, we're not sure you're right for the position, has resulted in a book. It's resulted in a business. It's resulted in the ability to help other women advance in their careers beyond their wildest dreams. And it's only because of the challenge. So sometimes our challenges can be our biggest setups. So Laura, can you share with us a time when you had to have a courageous conversation? What was one of those times and how did you start that conversation?
So there's several that I've had, but the first one that comes to mind, so to prove the point that the default setting is always negative, is the courageous conversation that I had that didn't go so well. But it was a good foundational element for me. And this was early on in my career. So I'm in corporate America and I'm working for a semiconductor company and I am handling inside sales. My boss, I'm handling outside sales, but I'm supporting him. My boss leaves. So now I'm doing both positions and I'm growing the business. I'm beating budget forecasts. I'm managing, the customers are very happy. Our vendors are very happy. I'm exceeding, and not only did I maintain what he left, but I grew it and I exceeded the expectations. So a couple months after exceeding, my boss who left called me and said, so have you gotten promoted yet? I was like, well, no. He goes, well, have you asked? Well, there's an idea. No, I haven't asked. So to answer your question, Mary, it took someone prompting me to get me out of my word track and my tapes that I had. And I thought, okay, well, what do I say? Because that was the next thing. Well, what do I say? Now I'm in a remote office at this time. Headquarters is in another state. So I don't have the opportunity to schedule an in-person meeting. I would highly recommend that these meetings be in person when they're appropriate. But if you can't, now we have this wonderful remote technology where you can Zoom in, Skype in, Google Teams, what have you. You can get to them and see them face to face. That would be the alternative I would suggest. But in my example, before all of that technology, I had to rely on a phone call. And I remember practicing and writing and figuring it out. And I remember just do it anyway. One of my favorite quotes, because I do love all things Star Wars, one of my favorite quote is by Yoda, and it's do or do not, there is no try. And the example of that is try to pick up the phone and make that phone call to your boss. You're either going to pick up the phone or you're not going to pick up the phone. There isn't, I'm going to try to pick up the phone. And so to really prove the point, throw a pencil down on the ground or a pen on the ground and try to pick it up. You're either going to or you won't. So in this example, I realized I needed to just do it. The worst thing that could happen is they told me no, and I keep the same position that I'm at, and I'm in the same position that I'm in. I had nothing really to lose. And the worst thing that I won't die, but the worst thing that would happen is I might sweat profusely while I'm making this phone call.
Okay.
So I just did it.
Laura, so what you just said there, you had nothing to lose, right? The worst that was going to happen is they were going to say no. But what if they didn't, right? There was opportunity. There was at least a little bit of hope. And I think that's what we need to be able to move forward sometimes, that spark of hope. But I just loved how you said that, right? You were going to do it. And the worst thing that could happen is they would say no.
Absolutely. And you're right. I later learned exactly what you're talking about. What if? What's the best solution? Well, here's the 100% guarantee. They're not going to say yes if I never ask. I can guarantee you 100% you're never going to get that raise if you never ask for it. I give you 100% guarantee you're never going to get that promotion, that new project, or whatever it is that you're looking for if you never ask. That's something I learned much later on. But in this moment, I needed to do it. I needed to prove to myself that I could do it. And so my why became stronger than the fear that was holding me back. And so I made the phone call. I remember picking up the phone and calling them, and I probably was stuttering and I was probably talking really, really fast. It probably wasn't a really good textbook moment, but textbook enough in the sense that I did it for the first time. And I remember I had my bullet points. I figured out this is why I'm calling. Here's why this is what I want. This is why I'm asking for this. And here's what it'll do for you. Here's what I can do for the company, for your position, by you moving me into this position. So I had all of what I thought were the key bullet points. It wasn't just all about me and what I wanted, needed, and what I could benefit. I made sure that I worked in what would be great for the company, for the department, and for him in his position. And when I made this ask and I was so excited to have all these bullet points, his response to me was he started laughing. And I just kind of sat there, kind of dumbfounded. I didn't know how to respond. I have a strong fear of looking stupid. And boy, was that triggering that fear in the biggest way possible. And I was silent. I didn't know what to do. And then he stops and he goes, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "So you're not joking?" "No, I'm dead serious. The numbers don't lie." I said, "But based on your response, clearly we're on different pages." And I proceed to have a conversation with him that it's not even worth giving energy at this point. But ultimately, I found out I was too young, I was the wrong minority, and I was a female. I was the wrong gender. And I just again stood there dumbfounded. I was like, okay. I hung up. I was defeated. I had my pity party. I might have shed a few tears. I don't know. I've kind of blocked all of that. But what happened is that boss that left called me back, said, "Did you make the phone call?" And he must have known I was making it right then and there. And I said, "Yeah, I did." He goes, "You sound horrible. What happened? Did he shoot you down? Did he laugh at you?" And I said, "Well, how did you know?" "Yeah, that's exactly what happened." He goes, "I was afraid of that." He goes, "But look, you didn't die." He goes, "All right, I've got an interview for you set up. I was hoping you could stay there, but I'm going to move you on to something else." He just wanted to see that I was going to take the initiative to have that courageous conversation because the position he was going to refer me to required me to do that on a routine basis. And it was more of a test than an interview. And that is what launched my sales career and got me into outside sales. So to ask people, how do you do it? You just do it. You do it anyway. You do it imperfectly. You're going to sweat profusely, but you're not going to die. But the flip side is, what greatness could come of it? We can never see around a corner. We don't have that ability in our eyesight, not that I know of anyway, but we can't see around a corner. And so you don't know what goodness is coming for you. You don't know what's divinely provided, what redirection you're going to have based on the rejection that you just had. You have no idea. So you have to be able to be willing to move forward to do your part to get around the corner. So many people stop and never look around the corner and they miss the opportunity. They miss their full potential. I'm forever grateful to that boss for pushing me ever so gently to make that phone call. And so to kind of put a pin into this, I've used that as motivation moving forward. One, the bad experience, I'm going to prove him wrong, became kind of a mantra. But then I flipped it. I'm going to prove me right. I'm going to bet on me every time. And when you bet on you, you will get your return. And that's just how I started moving and pivoting and having those courageous conversations. You just do them. The worst that could happen is you're not going to die. But the best is greater than you can ever imagine.
Yeah, and I love what happened because I don't love what the person said to you and the reasons that they didn't give you the advancement, and it's terrible. It's, but that is the reality for some people. That's whether you're a woman, you're not a woman. It just depends which company you're in, how your boss reacts, doesn't react. There's many, 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 many factors because we all cipher everything through our perception. And there are people out there that are explicitly biased, but then there's some ones that are implicitly biased. And then it's sometimes we're not asking in the right way. And it didn't sound like you didn't ask in the right way. But I think that's one of the most powerful things about the promotion planning process I've set up, because it takes that courage to get in there, right? So if we have the confidence, the courage, and we ask in the most impactful way, the worst that can happen is they say no. But you need that no, because if you continue to work harder and harder and harder, if you would have continued for another 6 months, another year, another year and a half, 2 years, just waiting. Okay, maybe the next performance review, maybe after that next strategic project I take on, maybe after that next success. And all you do is you just say yes, 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 till the overwhelm and the burnout and the negative ping pongs are flying around everywhere. The stress, palm is up in your face. And it's like, but all it took was you going in there and getting the answer that you needed to be able to move your life forward. And so sometimes our no's are the no's that we need to hear so we can get to our next yes. It's not always fair, but Jesus was sinless and everyone was yelling, crucify him, crucify him. Even his followers, the disciples, are like, I don't know him. And so when we can think, oh, Jesus didn't have to face that. He didn't have to face rejection. No, he did. And so we see how he handled it. And it wasn't through this pity party, right? It was through giving and serving and continuing to do what the Lord has called him to do. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that story. Thank you for being courageous. And thank you for just sharing with the listeners, how it can be hard and we won't always get the answer we want, but sometimes it's the answer we need so we can move on to that better situation. And I love that you went in and you asked before you just decided, well, I'm just going to go to another company. Because if you would have done that and you hadn't grown that courageous muscle for this conversation, then likely in the next company, you wouldn't have asked either and found yourself in this similar space. So beautiful. So
Thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you. And to
Yeah.
just kind of build on that for a second, yeah, if you don't face and have that courageous conversation with yourself, you're going to recreate that experience like you said. But I learned later on, and looking back, I realized what no really is. And someone taught me this. It was one of my coaches, that no is an acronym for new opportunity. So if you get a no, it means there's a new opportunity you have space to say yes to. So to your point, to get to the yes, if I had said yes, or they had said yes to me, there would have been no space for the opportunity that my former boss had in mind for me, because I would have just said yes to this. So you have to make sure that you realize that though it can be devastating, feel what you need to feel. I think everyone needs to go through that. I don't think you should ever deny your emotions and your feelings, but move through it and recognize that there's a new opportunity and there's some lesson that's going to galvanize. You're going to be able to use this. I have been able to use every single tough situation like that. But the reverse can also happen, though, when you're having a courageous conversation. It can result in things you never even imagined. And so you have to make sure that you're embracing those, recognizing those, giving equal power to your courageousness, regardless of the outcome. So here's something that one of my coaches that I have now says. He says, don't be addicted to the result. Be addicted to the activity. If you are addicted to bettering yourself, promoting yourself, not staying silent, having the courageous conversations, or if you're working with a coach like I do, I have multiple coaches actually, and you're working with coaches and bettering yourself, good things will happen. You're constantly being connected to your why. You're constantly making yourself more effective. The more effective you are, then you go get active. And you get active, you get active, you active. And then you come back and you get more effective again. And then you get active. It's this cycle of effective and active that really makes the difference. And that new opportunity is where you're going to find some effectiveness, but you will also find the activity. And that's incredibly important for growth.
Yeah, and that's what we're in control of, right? God tells us plant the seeds. All we can do, we just plant the seeds and he will make the harvest come. So and
Absolutely.
maybe that, that courageous conversation, it was kind of preparing you the same way David was prepared by fighting the lion or the bear before he got to Goliath. So all of these things can add to our lives in different ways. So what are just some real quick pointers that you could give if someone's like, okay, I've got to have this courageous conversation? What's just a really simple, easy way that people could get started with that?
So the first thing I would say is just keep it simple and don't take a lot of time to dwell on it. Just do it. The longer you dwell on it, or in my case, procrastinate. So if you're a procrastinator out there, the more you procrastinate on it, the worse the story's going to be, and the what if, and the boogie monster, and all the things that could go wrong that will probably never go wrong. The more you're going to put at mental blocks, or maybe this is just me, so maybe this isn't true for anybody else, but the more you're going to put at mental blocks. So what I would say is keep it simple. Take your emotion out of it and look at it very much from a place of issue, not position. Position is where the emotion lies. The issue is, back to my example, the issue was I'd been doing the work, I had the numbers, I wanted the promotion. Boom. That's what I need to say. The emotion of what was swirling around in my head really didn't matter in that moment, and it didn't matter to him. And for every conversation I've had since, it's always been the same case. It doesn't matter. So I would say keep it simple, stick to the facts as it were, the issue, and then do it. Deal with the result, the great result, the challenging result, the meh result, whatever happens. Be open to all of it. Learn from it, and then be open to whatever comes next. Whether you got a yes, okay, be open to whatever comes next there. You got a no, or you got a meh answer, or maybe we'll see. Be open to that and making decisions. And then turn into your own internal courageous conversation. What am I going to do with that response? Because ultimately, you're in control. You're in control of making the ask, and you're in control of accepting the result of that activity. You can choose, even if they say, yes, we'd like to give it to you, but we're going to give you a pay cut and we're going to ask you for more hours, or whatever the situation is, and you're not okay with that, you have the opportunity and the power to say no. You also have the power and opportunity to renegotiate that, to say, that sounds good, thank you for the opportunity. And I'm sure, Mary, this is where you can help everybody out on the proper way to show up powerfully to redirect and renegotiate that conversation. So all through the process, whether it is a challenging outcome, or it's a good outcome, you're in control of that. So keep it simple, stick to the issues, and then be open to that internal, courageous conversation to keep moving you forward.
Great tips, great tips. And that is the important part to remember. You are in control. We are in control. It's only when we give our power away that the other person actually holds it. And I know I did that in my career. And when I gave my power away, that's when I had the most struggles and the most stress. But the other person, a person can't take it. You have to give it away. So they can't take your power, but if you give it away, then you can feel powerless, but you are not. You are courageous. We know that you are. So Laura, one of your zones of genius is really helping to connect people. Oops. Laura, one of your zones of genius is really helping to connect people. Can you talk to us about some fun and easy strategies for people to nurture? Oh my goodness. I'm going to take a drink of water. Thank you for cutting this, Daniel. Laura, one of your zones of genius is really connecting people. Can you share with us a fun and easy strategy for people to use to nurture those professional relationships?
Awesome. Thank you for asking that question. And I'm going to speak from an introvert's perspective. So sometimes we are shy, which is different than introvert. But if you have shyness, or if you are uncomfortable or have social awkwardness, or you are that introvert, you get hung up on what to say. And so the simple strategy is this: ask a question. We have a phrase and a core value here at Down and Dirty Networking: talk less, question more. Don't rely on telling, just rely on question. Your goal should be, if you think about it from a relational networking standpoint, whether it's internal relational networking within your own company, or it's external with vendors, clients, and whomever else outside of the company, it's still relational networking. And the most powerful tool is questions. And if you can get to know more about someone, you want to learn from them and about them, that's the power. And one of my favorite questions comes from Amanda Gore, and I would highly recommend everyone use this one. It's a great question. And the question is this: what is the best thing that's happened to you recently? This question works whether you're meeting someone for the first time, whether you're reconnecting with someone. You can ask that question: what is the best thing that's happened to you recently? Now, you can edit the back end of that. You can edit and say, it's been a week. What's been the best thing that's happened to you in this week since we haven't seen each other? Or this month, or the year that we haven't seen. You can change the time frame, but recently works, uniformly across all the spectrum. So I would use it that way. And what happens with this question, the power of this question, is it requires a positive answer. It is different than asking, how are you? And then blah, they tell you. And you're like, wow, I kind of regretted that I asked. Or that you say, hi, how are you? And they're like, fine. And there's nowhere to go with a conversation. And your social awkwardness is triggered. And you don't know what to say. This solves all of that. What is the best thing that's happened to you recently? Allows someone to think of something positive, and it's an open-ended question. And you're going to be able to find out what's going on with them and have a conversation. So I have a short story to share that I think will really illustrate this, where this can work anywhere. So I was doing a leadership workshop, and I was helping internal departments who don't connect in a better way. And I gave them this homework to ask this question of one person they don't work with every day. They had to do it in person. It could not be on social media. So around Wednesday or Thursday before the weekly training for them to report back into me, and we were going to have our second workshop, this one person, it was late at night, I believe it was an engineer, and he was just saying, oh my gosh, I haven't done the homework. I'm so tired. Let me do the homework. He posted on Facebook. His coworkers were friends with him on Facebook, and they busted him. And they said, nope, you can't post this question on Facebook. You have to ask somebody in person. We're going to tell Laura on you. So sure enough, he's like, okay, now what am I going to do? So he stops at the grocery store to pick up some things to make for a late dinner. He's in the express checkout line. He says, all right, I'm going to ask the cash register. So the cashier is not someone you might think typically about networking. So we asked her, hey, I'm just curious, what's the best thing that's happened to you recently? She pauses, proceeds to tell him that she had an audition earlier that day and she's waiting for a callback. And he says, really? So he's talking to her. She's checking out. She checks him out. It's the express lane. He moves to the side to finish finding out about the audition. And there's a line behind him. And so people are coming through the line and they're listening. And she's telling them about the casting calls and the callbacks and all the particulars. And so now everyone's getting brought into this conversation. And as they're getting checked out, they're moving to the side next to him so they can continue hearing what's going on. So finally, there's this crowd around this cashier. And so finally they ask her, well, would you mind singing something for us? Because it was a singing audition. She goes, sure. So she starts singing to them late night in the express lane of a grocery store, and everyone applauds her. They're so excited. Now, he goes home and has an amazing dinner. He says, you know what? I was just trying to check a box and do homework. I had the worst day. It was late night. I was annoyed that I got called out on Facebook for not doing my homework. He says, and I had no idea the power of this question. He has since continued to stay in touch with her, and he would then always go through her checkout line to find out what was going on. So just asking a question is a great way to nurture and stay in touch with your professional network. What's the best thing that's happened to you recently? Or if you've used that one too often with them, hey, what's new and exciting with you? Anything that changes. But here's what's going to happen. The law of reciprocity will kick in. They're going to ask you the same question you've asked them. So if you ask, what's the best thing that's happened to you recently? They're going to be able to say, hey, well, Laura, what's the best thing that's happened to you? And now you get to share. And now you move from a one-way conversation to a two-way conversation. Your conversation becomes more meaningful and you make a deep connection. So I would encourage you, outside of your immediate coworkers, what departments do you never interact with? Start having that question asked and get to know people, and you will be shocked, surprised, and amazed what you learn, how it will raise your vibrational energy, and you might not even know what it could do to you professionally.
Brilliant advice. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Because the words that we say, the questions that we ask, that directly affects how people answer and then how we're feeling and how they're feeling. And I think sometimes we, because we've been taught, oh, words are only 7%, words are only 7%. They might only be 7%, but if you don't get them right, then the rest of it doesn't matter, because we can elicit poor responses if we ask the wrong question. So thought that was a brilliant question. If you haven't already, go write that down and use that. You will be so glad that you did. So Laura, you have been hinting at this health journey throughout the conversation today. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned you wish you would have known sooner in your career regarding health?
So I told you I had two trajectory moments. And the first one was when my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And that's really when the stress commando was born. I felt like I got a PhD in stress, and I was helping everyone learn the lessons I learned so they could learn through my mistakes and they didn't have to learn the hard way the way I did. So I felt I was giving everyone simple tips. Then I got diagnosed and had my own health journey. And I realized that my simple tips were too big for even me to manage in that space. So now I had to get even more stupid simple. I was like, okay, how do I even strip away and get it even more simple? And that's what I would tell everybody is I wish I would have realized I wasn't at my lowest denominator. I wasn't simple enough. There were other layers of simple that I could attain. Why did I feel like I needed to carry this burden and make it hard? Why did I need to be attached to the fact that being busy might be an equation for my self-worth and value within a company or for me professionally? I can be simple and effective. Now, simple isn't easy. That's the other thing that I learned. Simple isn't necessarily easy. For me personally, I have to work really hard for things to be simple, but I would say keep it simple. So that's the first thing. And that's simple as the way you approach everything. So even in launching Down and Dirty Networking, as a sales and marketing consultant, I know the things that I should be doing. And that leads to my second point. Don't should on yourself. I realized all the things that I should be doing to launch this business. I realized when I was in corporate America, all the things I should be doing, and I did that. And I'm putting these burdens on myself that were unrealistic. They're unsustainable. So removing the word should from my vocabulary has been something I've been working on for many, many years. And I would encourage everyone to join me in that challenge, to avoid and remove the word should. Instead, embrace the word can't. And I know that sounds a little counterintuitive because for so long, oh, but Laura, you can do this. You hear the word can't. You want to empower someone to believe that they can do it. That's not the way that I'm meaning the word. What I realized in this health journey, there are some things I cannot do. And so I had to be okay with the fact that I can't do that. Now, I could either go down the pity party route, or I could think of a better way. What's a different way? What's a simple way? What's a way that I could love that this could be done? So I'm either deleting the task or I'm delegating it. Now, in corporate America, we would say you could defer it by scheduling it. I have eliminated defer because defer has energy attached to it. Defer means it's looming out there and it's going to happen. And I should be doing something about this. So I just removed that deference and it's a should out there and I just delete it. I delete it or I delegate it. And those are the two ways that I manage it. So keep it simple and eliminate the shoulds. The other thing that I would say is recognize the true meaning of rest. Resting when I was in corporate America was maybe I was at home, my feet were up, I was dressed comfy, but I was still doing work. That's not rest. Or maybe I'm reading a book for work. That's not rest either. Rest is really allowing your brain to be calm and do nothing. Your brain is already busy keeping your lungs full of air, making sure that you can see, making sure that you can speak. To rest, you have to stop those things. You have to stop the inputs so the brain can power back up to produce better outputs for you. And so with the massive brain fog and fatigue, sometimes I lose the ability to read or see, or I have the inability to speak and I lose my words and the uhs are everywhere. Okay, take a breath. Rest for a second, give my brain a chance to catch up. And sometimes the brain needs more than a second. Maybe it needs a couple of minutes. Maybe it needs a couple of hours. It's like having recess when you were a kid. Kids need recess to just kind of filter energy and then they can stay focused and be productive. We as adults have lost the ability to have recess, but our brains are the same brain that it was as a child. Sure, it's more mature and more developed, but it still requires rest. It still requires recess. So build in that recess time. Make sure you're having that rest. And then the last one I would say is plan for the pivot. Things are going to happen. Have a plan, yes. Be open to possibilities, but plan for the pivot. Whatever systems you put in place, I have to have systems for everything. But I have contingencies and I plan for the pivot. I build in flexibility because stuff's going to happen. Stuff that I'm not in control of, but I'm in control of my flexibility. I'm in control of my response. I mentioned earlier about the power outages. I've got every contingency on the planet for right now in case that is to happen. So what are those contingencies? And then just be flexible with it. Nothing's perfect. And that's the last one. I don't pursue perfection. I was definitely a perfectionist. I now pursue participation. Where can I participate? Perfection means I'm analyzing, I'm thinking, I'm planning to do. I'm not getting anything done. Where can I participate? How can I participate in a way that's simple and in a way that I can actually enjoy and love? And so now you get to unlock that creative mind and create solutions and scenarios. And it's how I pivoted my entire business online with this diagnosis. I got to be creative and sit back and say, okay, I get to craft this. What does this need to look like? And when I look back, I did that in every single position that I was in when I was in corporate America. Because most of the times I was in a position that didn't exist before I arrived, and I had to create it. I had to create the systems, the solutions. I was in startup mode with every position. And so I was constantly having to say, well, how do I do this? I'm only one person. I don't have HR. I'm remote. How do I do this? And so I feel like if you follow those, but then strip them down to an even more simple space. So if you think you're simple, you're not there yet. Keep going. I promise you, there's another layer of simple available. You're going to love it. It's going to be sustainable. You're going to avoid burnout. You're going to avoid that stress, and you're going to actually love what you do a little bit more. And even if you just so happen to be in a position that you don't love, it's going to give you this space and the mental capacity to start to work and find the thing that you do love, and to do the things that you do love, and to pay attention to the why you're doing the thing that you don't love. It doesn't make sense to work like a crazy person for family when you cannot spend time with your family. So make sure it allows space for your why. So those would be the ones that I would say would be the simple tips. Pursue that participation, keep it simple, avoid the should, and make sure you're understanding the true meaning of rest.
And I think those alignments are right in line with what God wants for us, because he wants us to show up. He doesn't want us beating ourselves up. He gave us all of our gifts. He gives us our abilities. So when we're beating ourselves up, shitting all over the place, he's like, well, just take an action. And I can produce a harvest out of it if you'll just take the action. Don't get in that perfectionism. And then, take some time to rest and make sure. And one thing that's really unique is that prayer and play put you in the same vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And so make sure you're taking time to pray, ladies. Well, Laura, who would you say has been the most influential woman mentor in your life, and why?
That's a tough question. I've had so many. They're in my family. So my mom definitely would be the first one that would come to mind. And then my extended moms, which would be all my aunties, all her sisters. And then the grandparents, my grandmothers. They're all resilient. And I realize that I have their DNA. My mother is the most faithful person I know. I can rely on my mom to pray really well. And I'm a firm believer that mother prayers are stronger. They're the strongest prayers out there. And so even all of my friends who may or may not have strong faith will always say, hey, ask your mom to pray for me. And they know my mom's going to do it. There's going to be some rosaries and some novenas. There's going to be some heartfelt prayers prayed if I get my mom and my aunties on it. And so first and foremost, I would say that's it, to realize that faith was the most important thing. Family's the next thing. And my mom and my dad both instilled that you are better and deserving of more. You are good. You are capable. And so I really appreciated that they gave that to us, and to be kind, to be diligent, to put your best foot forward, and to pursue excellence. Now, though perfectionism kind of was my misinterpretation of that, excellence is something worth pursuing. And I think you can show up excellently for yourself. And I think you can show up excellently for those that you love and those around you. That's not just something that happens in the corporate space. And so I really appreciate my mom teaching that to me, and making sure that you pay attention to the details and you do it from a faith-based standpoint.
So beautiful. Laura, is there anything that you wish that I would have asked you that we didn't get to today?
Oh, I don't know. I can keep talking on for days. So if you were to ask me anything, I would keep going. This is lovely. This is awesome. I don't know if your audience would like that as much, but I think if there was just a parting word, realize that you're not meant to do it alone. You're not meant to do this alone. And it's why I started Down and Dirty Networking. I was the lone wolf. Having lived far away from family, being the oldest, I felt like my shoulders were to carry all of that. That was my burden. And that was my misinterpretation of what was being told to me. And what I realize now is the power of community. And it's okay to not be okay to say that, but you better have a support system. And if you don't find one, doesn't mean that you can't. You can find one. Even myself with my health journey, feeling disconnected, not being able to get out of the house or drive, I was able to find one. And when I couldn't find it the way that I wanted it, I built it. So you can find that community, that support system. Where's your safe space? Where can you have these courageous conversations or prep for courageous conversations? I would say make sure that you have that. And it's okay. This is the one that I have to work on. It's okay to show up in that safe space and not show up strong. It's okay to show your vulnerability. It takes a lot of courage and strength to be vulnerable, to show that you're hurt, that you're sad. That's okay. Through your vulnerability, you will tap into your strength. You will find the greatness to move forward. And so for me, it's always show up strong, be vulnerable in private. Don't let them see you sweat. That's not a healthy mechanism. In fact, I believe it's not a coincidence that that's why my father got sick with cancer at the most stressed out time in his life. I don't think it's a mistake that that cancer showed up there. That's just my belief. And so I realized from that lesson of my father, don't do that. Don't work so hard. Don't keep so hard on your goals that you miss out on the why you're doing it. You don't leave space for that. So I would say, if for those that are out there, make sure that you take time to find the power of community. Make sure you're connected to your why. If you don't know what it is, start figuring that out. That could be your first courageous conversation with yourself and others. And you'll find out you're not alone. Whatever you're going through, there are other people that are out there. You're not alone. Even if you feel all alone, I promise you're not alone. And I've been there. I felt alone so many times. And then I find out I'm not. And it's very comforting to help you move forward. So find that community, tap into the power that is you, believe that you have it, and know that you are divinely guided.
So beautiful. And Laura, it's not a far stretch to think that somebody listening today is still on the fence, wondering what they should do. They know that they were made for more. They believe that there's something more for their career, but they haven't quite got to that courageous point. Any final words of wisdom for them?
Keep moving forward. It doesn't need to be a big action. It can be something small. I look at myself and say, well, I haven't done anything earth shattering to change the world. I haven't done anything, Oprah worthy or what would be apostle worthy. I haven't done that yet, but we're not all meant to do that. There are very famous saints that are known for doing the little things. It's just, did they do it with excellence? Did you show up in a powerful way? Were you present? Were you kind? So it doesn't matter. I would say, don't worry about don't put this big picture. Remember, go back to what I said about keep it simple. Just keep moving forward positively. The big things will reveal itself. And maybe the big thing is the accumulation of all the little things that you strung together consistently. Maybe that's the big thing. My mom loves to say that she's so afraid that she's going to die and get to heaven and God's going to say she wasted all her gifts because she hasn't done any big things. And my brother and I disagree. I think we've turned out to be some pretty good citizens, and we owe that to her upbringing. And there's a lot of other things that we've done. Our faith is because of her. And she's touched so many other lives in ways that she doesn't even know. So, okay, is she saying that she hasn't done the Oprah worthy or the apostle worthy thing? Maybe she has, and she just hasn't seen it. So I would say, don't worry about it. Just keep moving forward, keep being positive, show up powerfully, and just keep bettering you, being the better version of yourself you can be every day. And I will end with this by saying, one of the things I learned in this health journey is that you can give 100%. Nobody has 110. Nobody has 150. It's a powerful phrase, and I've used it often. I'll give you 110%. You can only give 100. But here's the thing that I've learned. My 100% today will look differently tomorrow. It'll look differently than the 100% I have to give from yesterday. But I will give you my 100% of whatever I have in that moment. But it's going to look like an up and down roller coaster. It's not going to be a straight line. And life is not a straight line. So we shouldn't expect our 100%, back to that should, to be always at the top of the roller coaster. We don't have just flat valleys on this earth. They're hills for a reason, because you're going up and down, up and down. So give yourself permission, give yourself some grace, and recognize that your 100% is your 100%, whatever it is in that moment. And that's okay.
Well, Laura, everything you shared today has been so incredible. Thank you for your time, your energy, your stories, your vulnerability. You've just given so much to us today. So thank you for that. I'm sure that people are going to want to connect with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or if you Google Laura Morlando, or if you Google the Stress Commando, you'll find all of my social media links. You can go to any of those, or you can go to stresscommando.com and you can connect with me there. That's always an easy way to find me.
Perfect. Well, we will be putting Laura's link for her link tree in the bio, so you can get that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Laura, once again, for joining us today. Listeners, thank you. We never take it for granted that you would spend your time here to be encouraged in your career. Until we meet again next week, remember, you are only one plan away from your next promotion, and God, He's not done with you.
Hey friend, thank you for listening today. Be sure to join us next week for another great episode. If you receive value from today's show, I'd appreciate it if you would leave us a 5-star review to help others learn about the show. And if you're ready to fast track your career and increase your income, impact, and joy, then head on over to maryguirovich.com and check out the masterclass that teaches you how you can advance too. I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. This and so much more can be found in the show notes. I look forward to seeing you soon.